Please be seated. The court is back in session, and the chamber hand over the floor to the Deputy International Co-Prosecutor to put question to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, I have one more subject that I want to cover with you today, and that concerns the arrests of some cadres from hospitals in Tram Kak and the Southwest Zone, and in particular the arrest of a woman medic from your hospital that you've testified about. In interview E319.1.21 at answer 132, you provided the following testimony regarding the arrest of a female medic named Han from your hospital. I quote, "There was a letter from the district ordering her dismissal, and then they took her out of the hospital and sent her straight to Krang Tachan prison. They told me that the woman had had a relationship with Tak Kang, who was a senior Khmer Rouge cadre." End of quote. And in question and answer 134, quote, "Tak Kang was arrested by Pol Pot. The woman used to work with Tak Kang, and that was why she was arrested, but because she was considered one of Tak Kang's operatives." End of quote. Can you first tell the court who Tak Kang was?
Answer: Tak Kang was the chief of Hospital 22. At the time, the woman Han was with him.
Just to make sure I understand, Kang was the chief of the zone hospital, Hospital 22, and Han was someone who used to work for Kang at that hospital. Do I understand correctly?
Answer: yes, that is correct.
And did you see Han on the day when you visited Krang Tachan to spray insecticide?
Answer: I met Han. She was cooking rice, a small pot of rice.
Mr. President, at this time I'd like to provide to the witness two documents, E3/4164 and E3/4145. These are two prisoner lists from Krang Tachan that I would like to ask the witness about, with your leave.
President, you may proceed.
Mr. Witness, I've given you two documents. The first, E3/4164, and the relevant pages here are Khmer 00079-337 through 38, English 009-731-47, and French 009-37104. This is a list entitled Brief Biographies of Prisoners at Tram Kak District Education Office. And I want to refer you to the second and third people on the list. In particular, the third person on this list is a female named Uch Han, a 26-year-old medic from Trapeang Kul, who was arrested on the 23rd May of 1977. And the comment for Uch Han indicates that she was implicated in the responses of Hong and Kong. My first question to you is the woman identified in this record as Uch Han the same person you have described who was arrested from your hospital and taken to Krang Tachan?
Answer, that was the woman.
And so it's clear, was Han one of the prisoners who survived Krang Tachan and was released?
Answer, yes.
Do you remember when she was released from Krang Tachan?
Answer, I did not know when she was released.
Now, there is a second female medic referred to in both of the lists that I provided to you, who's listed next to Uch Han, named Vorn Sarun. She was a 27-year-old medic from Hospital 22 who was arrested on the same date as Han, the 23rd of May, 1977. And the comments for both these women in both prisoner lists are the same. They're both described as people who were implicated in the responses of Hong and Kong. Do you remember this woman medic, Vorn Sarun?
Answer, I never knew this person.
Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to now provide to the witness document D-157.13, D-157.13, which is one of the documents that's been identified as a notebook from Krang Tachan. With your leave.
Mr. President, just
You may proceed, Mr. Kope.
only a request for clarification in relation to the previous document. Did I hear the prosecution say Vorn Sarun, or did I just mishear that? Because I have Rang Sarun.
This is, again, a situation where we have multiple translations. We have two different documents. We have a list in which her first name is Vorn. We have notes of her interrogation in which she's identified as Vorn. So there are about 4 or 5 different references to this individual in the various Krang Tachan records. The reference as Rang is the only one out of many references. So we're happy to refer this again to the CMS people, but I'm using the name of the most common name of this person.
I'm happy to accept this explanation, but I would also be able to verify what the prosecution is saying. So, where exactly is Rang Vorn? In which document? And so that I can follow what the International Court Prosecutor is saying.
Let me just take 2 minutes then to put on the record the various references to this person so it's clear. First, in this document E34164, she is again, as I've said, identified as a 27-year-old female from Kache village. I may not be pronouncing this correctly. A medic from Hospital 22 who was implicated in the responses of Hong and Kong. In document E34145, the first page, again, there is a person identified with Uch Han. In this one, the name is translated as Vorn Sanu, again, a 27-year-old female medic from Kache, from Hospital 22, who is indicated as someone who was implicated by Hong. In document D157.7, this is a notebook from Krang Tachan. At Khmer 00270-874, English 00866-433 through 34, French 00872-808 through 09 contain the notes of the interrogation of a Vorn Saroon, 26-year-old female from Kache village who worked at Hospital 22. And there is also a reference to a rune in the document that I was about to question the witness about. To respond to counsel too, it is very common, particularly with spellings of names, for there to be differences in translations. We will certainly follow your directive with respect to significant things. I don't think that we would be able to notify CMS every time there is a difference in how names were translated or spelled. So I hope I can proceed at this point with the next document, which is D157.13. Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to submit this document to the witness.
President, you may proceed.
Mr. Witness, the document I've just handed you is a notebook, and it contains notes of the interrogation of a cadre from Hospital 22 named Hun Hong. You'll find that reference at Khmer 00270-827 through 29, English 0106-4174 through 76, French 00971-285 through 288. And the prisoner lists that I just showed you indicated that Uch Han had been implicated by two people, Kong, who you've already identified, but also by someone named Hong. And I'd like you to look at these pages that relate to this Hun Hong person. And first of all, tell me, do you remember a cadre named Hong who worked at Hospital 22?
Answer. I do not remember. I do not recognize this individual. I never went to that hospital. I knew that there was the name Kong, and I never saw this person personally.
Now, in Hong's notes, he refers to Kong as Achar Kong. Did you hear the person Kong, who was the head of Hospital 22, referred to as Achar Kong?
Answer. I heard there was a person by the name Gong, the chief of Hospital 22. I do not know whether there were more Gongs.
And if you look at the notes on the pages I provided, there's a list of 16 cadres, 16 hospital medics. And I'd just like you to take a quick look at those 16 names who are identified as being medics or people who worked at various hospitals, including Trop Yung Kul, and tell me if you remember or knew any of these people.
Witness, what are the names? I cannot find those names.
I'm lost too, Mr. President. Could you, Mr. Prosecutor, please give us the document number again?
Yes, it's the same document, D157.13. And if you look at Khmer page, should be 00270828 through 29, you'll see a list of 16 names. They're numbered. Same thing in the English translation. It appears at 1064, 175 through 176, a list of 16 people. And the French ERN range is, these notes are in 00971-285 through 88. You'll find the same list of 16 people there. My question is simply for you to look at the names of the 16 hospital medics or cadres and tell me if you knew any of those people.
Answer. I cannot read the names because the document is not clear to me.
Fair enough. In your interview E3/5511 at answer 21, you made the following statement about Kong. I think Kong was the chief of the zone hospital. He was arrested and executed by the Khmer Rouge, and Neri Han was arrested as she worked with Kong. End of quote. Do you remember what year it was, when it was that Kong was arrested?
Answer. I do not remember the year, the day.
Let me read to you an excerpt from a document E3/2120. This is E3 2120. This is the book by Meng Tri E, The Chain of Terror. This is only in English at 00416 443 through 416 444. This is a report of an interview of a driver of Tamak, and the passage reads as follows, quote, "One day in late 1976, after returning from Phnom Penh, Tamak called a member of the Southwest Zone Committee named Achar Kong to his house. After the two men talked for a moment, Tamak ordered his soldiers to arrest Achar Kong, place him in shackles, and put him in a car. Achar Kong's S-21 confession states that he had been arrested and sent to S-21 for interrogation on the 2nd of October, 1976. End of quote. Now, Mr. Witness, you indicated in your OCIJ interviews at one point you stated that Kong had been arrested by Pol Pot, and in the second excerpt I read, you said he was arrested and executed by the Khmer Rouge. My first question to you is, how did you learn, from whom did you learn that Achar Kong had been arrested by Pol Pot?
Answer. I heard from a villager or people living near the hospital 22. People lived around the hospital knew about that, and they told me.
The last document and last questions I have for you, Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to provide to the witness a copy of E3/1135. That's E3/1135, which is a document that relates to Achar Kong.
President, you may proceed.
Mr. Witness, the document that I've handed to you is a report from the 19th of October, 1976 from Mut. It discusses, it's a report regarding the wife of Achar Kong, who had been hospitalized in Division 164, but who had disappeared. And there are a number of people who were identified as her associates, a man named Cheng and a man named Bon. And then there is a note on this report dated the 20th of October addressed to Bong Nguyen that states, quote, "Now Achar Kong's wife has already left the division hospital. 2. Request to search for Cheng and Bon, who are related to this matter." End of quote. My first question for you is, did you know the wife of Achar Kong?
Answer. I do not know. I do not know Kong face, and I only knew that he was the head of Hospital 22.
Did you know whether there was a hospital in Kampong Som and whether cadres or people from the Southwest Zone sometimes went to that hospital?
Answer. I was not aware of it.
And my last question is simply relates to the two people associated with Achar Kong's wife who are identified in this document. That is the men named Cheng and Bon. Do either of those names ring a bell to you? Did you know who either of they were?
Answer. For the two individuals, I did not know them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness, for bearing with me today with a lot of documents. I appreciate your time, Mr. President. I have no further questions.
Just, Mr. President, a request for clarification on not the last document and also not Meng Tra's book, but the document before, the list of 16 names. We were just not able, all of us here, to follow prosecution. So if he would again be so kind and tell us to which page he was referring.
I'll assume you're want to look at the English pages. The English pages are 01064175 and 01064176 of document D157.13. There is a section that starts on one page, continues on the next. The list of 16 starts with these words. The associates who joined the traitorous activities with the contemptible Kong and whom he always promoted or sent for technical classes are as follows. And then there's a list of 16 people.
Just for the record, Mr. President, the reason why we couldn't follow is that it seems that the old translation said that the document was intelligible and that a new document was added to the case file. That's what I'm getting from the back. I don't know if that's correct, but just for the record. If it's not, please, I stand corrected.
We listed this document on the interface. I just printed it out from Xylab, so I have no idea why you cannot, why you would not be able to access it. It's on Xylab. So.
President, actually the document is on the case file, and the National Council, please try to locate that document at least in the Khmer language. I think you need to manage within your own team, try to locate the relevant documents. The Chamber would like now to hand the floor to the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to put questions to this witness. You may proceed. Lawyer for civil parties. Thank you. And good afternoon to your honors and everyone. My name is Rajan T, the civil lawyer for civil parties. And good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I'd like to put some questions to you. And the first subject is in relation to your roles and positions. When you attended the two study sessions, that is the two medical trainings, and one of which you engage in the German anatomy. Did you only study this topic in theory, or was there actually a hand-on practice on live human beings? Answer. Actually, we only studied it in theory, that is on paper, with no live subject. Question. In that study session, how many participants for each of the two sessions that you attended? Answer. There were medics from the communes. Actually, there were 12 medic communes, and there were 12 rather true district medics. Question. And the trainer, where did the trainer come from? And please tell the name if you can recall the name. Answer. Say was the trainer, and actually Say was chief of the sector hospital. Question. While you worked at the hospital, you stated that there were many patients, and on a daily basis there were almost 100 male and female patients. How many actually medical staff were there together in the hospital? I do not want you to refer to the support staff as you stated this morning. Answer. The medical staff who could engage in treatment, there were two medics. In addition to myself, that's for the male medics, and there were about 5 female medics. When I talk about the number of patients who came for the treatment, they were actually not in-house patients. They just came to ask for medicines, and then they left. And for the women's section, there were more than 100 patients a day. However, they would come to acquire the medicines, and then they left. They were not in patients. Question. And the medicines for the treatment of those patients, were the medicines traditional or modern? And who actually supplied you with the medicines? Answer. I'd like to talk about the traditional medicines. I had a few staff who try to locate herbal medicines for the treatment of our patients. And we also had a few female medics engaged in traditional medicine. We tried to actually cook our own medicine. That's for the use within the hospital. Question. The main point that I'd like to ask you is the following. How effective was that medicine? Answer. It varied. The in-house medicines that we produce, sometimes it produces a good result, for example, for the treatment of diarrhea, but in other cases it didn't work, so we had to supply the patient with a modern medicine. We actually had a few in-house medicines for the treatment of the patients, and besides that we have some vitamins, B1, B12, etc. That were supplied to us. And of course, the latter was more effective for the treatment. Question. What was your observation on the children who might have been sent for the treatment at your hospital? Were there many children? Answer. There were many children who would come to the hospital to ask for medicine for the treatment of a headache or diarrhea. And in fact, those children, they came from collecting cow dung from the nearby villages. And usually they would come to ask for medicine for headache. There were about 5 to 10 of them every day. Question. The diseases that you treated, as you stated, include the dysentery and the swelling nature of the illness. Were the patients fully treated? Was there a relapse? Or did some of them die due to the lack of medicine? Answer. For the patients whose body was swelling or who had dysentery, they came for the treatment, and of course not all of them could be fully treated. While they were there, we would provide them with cooked rice, and in addition to the medicine that we provided, and they would stay for 5 to 10 days, and then they recovered and left. And if their symptom could not be improved within these 5 to 10 days periods, I would refer them to the sector hospital, and in other cases they died. Question. Were many patients dead? Answer. Toward the later regime of the Khmer Rouge, that is about 1 or 2 months before the collapse of the regime, many patients died. And every day we had to dig pits to cover those patients who died, maybe 10 to 20 pits every day. Question. Did you know the real cause of the so many deaths toward the later part of the regime? Answer. Yes. Because initially, we were provided with 25 to 50 cans of rice for the hospital, but toward the later part of the regime, we were not given that rice. So we did not have anything to feed the patients. And sometimes we had to ask the people nearby to go and get the rice for supplying to our patients. But by the time we received those supplies, it was the time that we had to flee already. Question. While you were at that hospital, did you receive any pregnant women who went there for treatment? Answer. Yes, we did. They came rather frequently. Sometimes we would receive them 2 or 3 months in a month. Sometimes those women, they delivered their babies at the base. We also had 5 or 6 midwives who were skillful in delivering the baby, and I myself also have expertise in this area. Question on the technique of baby delivery and the issue of baby delivery. Were any babies died during the delivery? Question: no. While they were at the hospital, there was no such case. However, on other instances, the mothers survived, but a baby died during the delivery. And sometimes we had to engage in cesarean operation to rescue the baby or to use a suction cup. Question, I'd like to move on to another subject. You talked about the conference that you attended where you heard instructions regarding the purchase. Who actually called people to attend the conference, and who actually chaired that conference? Answer: that conference were chaired by the district committee through the district office people there. And I did not know how many participants were called by the district committee, but I observed that some commune chiefs were called while others were not. Question: after you received that instruction, who was responsible for the implementation of that instruction? Answer: in fact, it was people in the leadership who had to implement that instruction, that is group chiefs, unit chiefs, village chiefs, commune chiefs, etc. Question: did you yourself engage in the implementation of that instruction? Answer: the only thing that I experienced was that my uncle and my elder brother-in-law were taken away. In fact, in regards to my elder brother-in-law, I didn't witness it myself, but my wife came to tell me about it, and when I ran home, he had already left. Question: in response to a question on the letter by the district committee, that is in regards to a former major, and you stated that the person had already been sent. Can you tell the court what happened later on to this former major? Answer: I am afraid that that soldier died that night. He really liked me, and while he was in my hospital, he told me that he was a former major. And next day, I saw a letter from the district secretary that he was looking for this major from Rumchang commune and that he had to be sent back to his base. And I knew that that would be a problem for him. Then I wrote a letter in response and sent it by a messenger that I had sent that patient back home 3 days ago. And I told him, the patient, to get on a horse cart which was being used to transport the food supply in Rumchang village, which was his village. So he actually got on that horse cart and went to his village. The reason that I'm afraid that he died because since that day I did not receive any news from him. And he was actually a good person, and unfortunately I did not learn of his name at that time. Question. So in your account that the major got on a horse cart and disappeared. And in your document E3/5511, in question answer number 12, you talked about the communal committee, and there were 3 people in that committee, and a little bit further down you also stated that a member of the committee was a policeman who was in charge of making arrest of people. My question to you is the following. Does it mean one of the 3 people within the committee was in charge of the military, that is, who was in charge of making arrest of people? Is that what you meant? Answer. The 3 members of the committee had different duties. The deputy chief of the deputy chief of the committee was performing a policeman role, that is, engaging in making arrest. Question. You stated that you were sent to spray insecticide at the Kantachan prison. How many of you actually went to that prison? Question. The answer, rather, there were 5 of us, including myself. Question. How far was the prison from the hospital where you worked? Answer. The distance was about 6 to 7 kilometers. Question. Upon your arrival, you engage in spraying the insecticide, and actually upon your observation, can you tell the court what kinds or how many types of insects were there at the hospital, at the prison? Answer. In fact, it was not the prison chief who requested me to go there. It was the district committee or district secretary who sent me to spray insecticide at the forest or bushes near the area in order to prevent malaria. Questioned, when you were spraying insecticide around the prison compound and upon your observation, how many prison buildings did you see? Answer, I saw 3 big buildings and 2 small buildings. The big buildings, they were big in size and long in length. This is my last question to you. When you arrived at the prison, did you learn of any information about the prisoners who were detained there, or that whether those prisoners were tortured? Answer, no, I was not. I did not know whether the prisoners were tortured, because when I was there, I did not see any interrogation or any torture site. However, we were prohibited not to go to a certain area, that is to the south part of the compound. Question, did you see a building in that prohibited area? Answer, it was a small building. It was about 5 meters by 6 meters. But that's from my personal estimate, since I was a bit far from that building. Question, did you feel any bad smell while you were around in that area? Answer, no, there was no foul smell, because I think even if there was any smell, it would be overwhelmed by the smell of the insecticide. Because each of us had to spray a bucket of that insecticide, and after we finished it, we returned. Lawyer, Mr. President, I don't have any further questions, and Mr. Witness, thank you. President, Councillor Vita Coupe, do you have the floor?
Yes, Mr. President, I do apologize to revisit this document issue again, because there is something strange going on with this document. Because what we have in the paper version is D157.13, and it says here, this handwriting document is illegible, so there's no translation. One would expect then there is a corrected document of D157.13, but we cannot find such a correction. So, because we cannot find a correction, we were basing ourselves upon this D157.13, which says this handwriting document is illegible. So, if we go to Xylab, we see that there's a creation date still at 6 May 2010. So what it looks like is that this document has been recently translated without any notification, which seems odd in the light of the fact that it is indeed a very difficult to read document in the original Khmer. So my point is to indicate that we are not unorganized, but there is something strange going on with this particular document. So we need to know what the situation is. We were indeed able to immediately take this off Xylab, but this is a new version of D157.13, apparently recently translated, which of course begs the question why the translators were now able to translate and weren't before, but that's another issue. But I think I'm raising this point now to ask clarification as to what happened with this specific document.
President, the Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
I think that's a question he should direct to CMS. He wasted I don't know how much time because he had an old version of this before the English translation had been posted. I can't answer why someone from CMS thought this document was illegible. The French translation has clearly been on the case file for a while. You can tell. You can tell from the document numbers roughly when these documents were posted. But this is a question he can raise with the translators. And sometimes my understanding is translators are sent a copy that is not a good copy, and they're able to go back and get a better copy. But I'm not the right person to answer this question. You can correspond with CMS. All I can tell you is that this document has been in Xylab for a long time, since I started preparing for this witness weeks ago. That's all I can tell you.
I understand what the prosecutor is saying, but if we do not get notified of an English translation, then of course we are working on the assumption that this document is unintelligible. Maybe it's translated from the French version. I don't know, but again, we're not quite sure what's going on with these documents, but I think we need clarification.
And just one more point, that's what the interface is for. We posted this document on the interface. If you looked at the interface and clicked on this document, you would have got it. No, you would not have got that if you clicked on the interface, I guarantee you.
President, thank you for raising this matter. The Chamber thinks it is appropriate for Consul Coupe to make a request to ITU for clarification, since you are the one who initiated this issue, so that ITU can clarify this matter once and for all. The hearing today comes to its adjournment, and we will resume tomorrow, that is Wednesday, 18 March 2015, commencing from 9 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow, the Chamber will continue to hear the remainder of the testimony of this witness, Mr. Wilson. This information is for the concerned parties and for the public. And Mr. Wilson, we thank you for your testimony. However, it is not yet concluded. Thus, you are invited by the Chamber to return tomorrow, starting from 9 o'clock in the morning. You may now return to your residence. And court officer, in collaboration with WISU, please make necessary transportation of Mr. Wilson to his residence, and invite him to return to this courtroom tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock. And the Chamber also is grateful of the Duty Counsel, Mr. Utpari, and you are again invited to return tomorrow to assist the witness, real zone. And it will commence from 9 o'clock in the morning. Security personnel, you are instructed to take the two accused, Nunji and Kisampon, back to the detention facility and have them return to participate in the proceedings tomorrow morning prior to 9 o'clock. The court is now adjourned.